Every holiday season, amidst the Christmas shopping, the office parties, and the family get-togethers, we're reminded to think about the less fortunate. And no one is less fortunate than the hundreds of thousands of homeless men and women who will spend the Christmas season alone and on the streets. We tend to think of them as hopeless cases, the flotsam and jetsam of American society. But that's not always true. A few years ago, we discovered a place that changed our perceptions about homeless people, and we decided this Christmas was the perfect time to go back and see how they were doing. There's not much joy or peace on earth for New York's homeless this Christmas season by order of Mayor Rudolph Giuliani, who spoke to them on the radio.
You do not have a right to sleep on the streets of New York City. It doesn't exist anywhere. The Founding Fathers never put that in the Constitution.
The choice the mayor is offering the homeless this holiday season is go to jail or go to a city shelter, where the mayor is trying to force them to work for their upkeep.
What do we want? Housing! When do we want it? Now!
The story of what to do about the poor and the homeless is as old as the passing millennium. 3 Christmases ago, not far from the spot where the new millennium will be ushered in, we discovered a small miracle, the Times Square Hotel. When we first walked through the door 3 years ago, it was like re-entering the Gilded Age. You'd have never guessed that this was once a dilapidated flophouse, or that half of the 650 tenants here used to be homeless. Jerry and her dog Cleo once lived in a vacant lot. Deese, who was reading the Wall Street Journal, wandered the street for 14 years. Kenny had been living here for 2 years, but this was how a CBS News crew found him back in 1992. They were just part of the eclectic mix of people living here. Low-income elderly, people with AIDS, the mentally ill, and the working poor, including a lot of young artists and aspiring actors and musicians making less than $25,000 a year. It was all the brainchild of Roseanne Haggerty. She had been developing low-income housing for Catholic charities when she decided to rescue the Times Square Hotel from the wrecking ball.
How does it work having all these different kinds of people here?
Well, it's never dull. Whenever we advertise for positions, we tend to use the phrase lively atmosphere.
This is what it looked like a decade ago, when it was managed by a slumlord who charged the city as much as $1,500 a month to house indigent families in rotting single-room apartments. Some rooms were so filthy that professional cleaning crews refused to enter them. But Haggerty saw an opportunity to use existing government money in a very creative way. She formed her nonprofit corporation, Common Ground Community, and convinced city officials to give her $29 million in low-interest loans to buy and renovate the building.
She got the money to restore the lobby from 4 big corporations: Clorox, J.P. Morgan, Dime Savings Bank, and Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream. They received federal tax credits for investing in low-income housing and in the restoration of an historic building. What Haggerty promised to do in return for the money was to help solve 2 pressing problems. Half of the units would be set aside for much-needed low-income housing, the other half for the homeless.
But the Times Square Hotel is a lot more than a government-subsidized low-income apartment building. It's the largest, most dramatic example of something called supportive housing. It's called supportive housing because tucked away above the grand old lobby are the offices of social workers, substance abuse experts, and vocational counselors, all there to help people deal with the problems that caused them to become homeless in the first place.
We're going to do your Section 8 application.
And Tony Hannigan, whose nonprofit Center for Urban Community Services runs this part of the operation, told us it's all available where it will do the most good, right where the people live.
We're talking about helping people set up an apartment when they move into the building, pots and pans, shopping for dishes. We're talking about working with a person to get linked up to a mental health clinic in the community, seeing if the medication they're being prescribed is working out for them. You name it, we do it.
We've tried to create, the social fabric that many people here, especially those who are homeless, are otherwise completely bereft of.
In fact, at any given moment in the life of the building, you'd have had a hard time figuring out exactly who had been homeless. Take Earl Walker, who used to be a crack addict and lived in the stairwell and on the roof of a building in the Bronx, gathering returnable bottles and cans for money.
I listen to people having their Christmas dinners and so forth from the staircase, the music, stuff like that. Not very enjoyable at all.
What do you remember about that time?
Loneliness. Very lonely. I felt like I was the only person in the world.
By the time we met him 3 years ago, he'd gone from living on rooftops to patrolling them, working full-time as a security guard. The people at the Times Square trained him and found him the work.
They gave me a job. It was the first job I don't know in how long. And here's this money that you're making, you're earning. Nobody's giving it to you.
Like most people at the Times Square, he didn't come directly from the street. He ended up in the city's vast shelter system, where he said the conditions were barbaric, probably worse than prison, and almost as hard to get out of. From there, he went through a residential drug treatment program and eventually landed a spot at the Times Square. Like all of the tenants, he was paying 1/3 of his income in rent. In his case, $390 a month for a single room with a private bath. And it didn't take us long to get the full tour.
Here's my eating area and my bed. They kind of double as both.
Modest, but a far cry from the cot he occupied at the Brooklyn Armory. He still had his ID cards from those days in the city shelter system.
Look like a different person, that's for sure.
Those are like my little reminders. If I get too cocky on myself, just to remember where I came from.
You're probably wondering who pays for all of this and how much it costs. Well, 60% of the annual operating budget comes from existing public funds of one kind or another. The rest comes mainly from rent paid by the tenants. Altogether, Haggerty estimates that it costs the taxpayers about $10,000 a year to house a homeless person at the Times Square. But she says it would be costing the taxpayers a lot more if they were somewhere else.
Those 300 tenants who are living here now who were homeless, they were in shelters at $20,000 plus a year in public money before they lived here. Some were in jails at $58,000, $60,000 a year before they moved here. There are many who are coming from psychiatric hospitals where the public cost is $113,000 a year in New York State. This is a bargain.
But how could a room in a place like this cost less than a cot someplace like this? Well, for one thing, most people in the hotel work and pay rent. To get people started, there have always been dozens of jobs right in the building. Some people work in the Starbucks coffee shop that Roseanne Haggerty lured into the building, and at the Ben & Jerry's franchise next door, which the company donated to the Times Square. The rent from the Starbucks and the profits from the Ben & Jerry's help pay for the job counselors and the training programs that put the tenants to work. But the biggest savings of all for the taxpayer is that people who live here don't require 24-hour-a-day institutional care. 3 years ago, we met this young woman who had a multiple personality disorder. On Monday through Thursday mornings, she was Annie Laurie, doing office work at the Times Square Hotel. On Friday afternoons, she was one of either two 12-year-olds, Melissa or Elizabeth, making waffle cones at the Ben & Jerry's.
Ready, set, go! Get over here.
Is it easy for you to live here and to function here?
Yes, because I've got as much independence as I can handle and as much support as I need.
If you weren't here doing this, where would
Right.
you be?
Probably I would be in and out of hospitals, repeatedly in and out of hospitals.
Before she came to the Times Square, she used to be hospitalized every 2 to 3 months at a cost to the taxpayer of $1,000 a day.
How many people come here and can't make it?
Well, I can, maybe if one definition of that is what's our rate of eviction, what's the turnover rate? Last year it was just over 1%.
That's what things were like back in 1996. When we decided to revisit the Times Square Hotel this Christmas, we had no idea what we'd find. A lot can go wrong in 3 years, and dreams can die.
Remember Kenny, who was doing so well, the man we'd found passed out in a doorway back in 1992? He started drinking again and has disappeared. But everyone else we met 3 years ago seems to be thriving. Like Annie Laurie, the young woman with the multiple personalities.
We're employing just one Annie Laurie in one position, so.
And her name's Annie Laurie.
Annie Laurie, yes.
Annie Laurie Hunter feels so good about the way things have been going for her that she's moved out of the Times Square and is living on her own in a larger apartment. She's working at the Prince George Hotel, Roseanne Haggerty's latest reclamation project, 416 units of supported housing. Annie Laurie is one of the people in charge of filling those apartments.
The last time I saw you, you had a couple of different personalities that were working in different jobs.
Right, they quit. They had enough Ben & Jerry's. They've eaten enough ice cream, I think.
Is your life more stable now, do you think?
Yeah, it's a lot more stable. I'm no longer on Social Security, just working full-time.
This was a hotel?
A luxury hotel back in at the turn of the century.
Like the Times Square Hotel, the Prince George was run down and crime-ridden before Haggerty's nonprofit group bought it. About half of the crime in the 13th precinct is said to have been associated with the hotel. Today, workmen are painstakingly restoring the tile floors and moldings, all part of a $26 million renovation funded in part by tax credits from J.P. Morgan and Fannie Mae.
This is the hotel ballroom. This gives you
The old hotel ballroom is going to be leased to a restaurant, which will fix it up and employ some of the building's residents.
It'll be amazing. It's 5,000 square feet, and there's an 1,800 square foot kitchen area behind here.
Magnificent.
Yeah.
Amid the Christmas decorations and the construction, tenants are already moving in. As with the Times Square Hotel, there will be a long waiting list because there is not enough supportive housing, not enough money, and not enough Roseanne Haggertys to go around.
I don't begin to understand why in various parts of the country and even here in New York, why more money isn't spent on something that's such a positive way out for people.
What is the obstacle, do you think?
Well, I think political will. The public, the homeless, our leaders, should maybe point things in the direction of long-term benefit and long-term cost savings.
To see the long-term benefits, all you have to do is to take a look at the people in the lobby of the Times Square Hotel, or at Earl Walker, who not too many Christmases ago listened to people celebrating the holidays from a stairwell in the Bronx. He's left the Times Square and moved into a 3-bedroom apartment with his girlfriend. He's been promoted to supervisor in a security job and is looking to buy a house. With each year, he's grown more confident, learning to do simple things all over again, like paying bills and decorating a Christmas tree.
You know, a couple of years ago, I never dreamed of this. Whereas now, I have responsibilities, I have dreams. You know, it's 1,000 miles from where I was.
It's going to be a good holiday for you?
Definitely. Best yet.
Excuse me for a moment, please.
What did you give him?
Oh, I just gave him some pocket change.
Randolph, leave me alone, Mortimer. Randolph! I'm still not talking to you. Look. Mortimer, we're back.
To America.
They was told not to ride in Patty's hearse and stay out of Charles' mansion. Took Abraham's Lincoln through the Tar Bridge expansion. Willis reads a map that marked the spot showing. On his left, George burns a blunt, Williams holding. Tara banked the money that Shaka Khan before. Alicia keyed his car for giving Melba more. For the red fox, she brought up the block, thought twice as Deborah cocked the gun cause she beat Kelly's price when Rosa parked the truck on the farm of Kim Fields. Linda tripped for trying to walk in Lawrence Hills. Water dripped out of Ferris faucet in the glass. She was super fly, Curtis Mayfield her ass. Chris Tucker to a show, Ted Turner to a hoe. Robert Dix the beat, but ain't feeling the flow. But he signed fast for half of Johnny's cash. Nia Long for the album to drop. Cameras flash, Tom Sawyer at the Lucille Ball up in the foyer. He confronted Richard prior to hiring his lawyer. Suge's Knight, he moved the rook off the board. Don King was checked and Al Sharpton his sword. The Saints marched in, Curtis blow Lena's horn. Tom cruised the boulevard, Chris rocked the song. For the 100th time, they pressed rewind to the beginning. They toast to the rhyme the juice spilt on John's linen. He took it to Elizabeth, Taylor the dry clean, a known seamstress who was scheming on Al's green. You know they shoot for the stars and buck wild, like the kids in the yard who played with James Chow. A beautician lace, Erica's bad dude. Sean combed through the evidence just to get a clue. The needle in the haystack from out of Earth's kit. Knew a tiger would kill him once thrown in Brad's pit. Jesse owned the money for the weed, Bubba Spark made his journey seem far as he walked in Dick Clark's. Jeffrey's line stuck with a thorn from George Bush. Paul pierced in the heart as the crowd pushed, acting alone. Drew buried more bones of the victims 3 blocks from Jim's brownstone. They shared the same bowl. He caught Natalie's cold. The producer threw the butter on Esther's roll. Nipsey rustled him down, got his jaw wired in an instant. Brooke shields him from the gunfire. Angie stoned him to death with those vocals. Keep sweat from the workout just from running local. Larry's bird flew out of Nicolas Cage. Joe text messages from Satchel's page. Betty write letters with ink from Sean's pen. Infinite bars, you couldn't tell where the song end. Glenn close enough to quickly dub the tapes. Richard Gere ripped while he was climbing Bill Gates. He was a southerner, posing as a native New Yorker. The Jason Kidd took his first steps in Jimmy's Walker. He stayed online, chatting with raps and labs. Used Bernie's Mac to search Veronica's web. It cost him their life for the advice she gave. Now Pete Rose lay on Vanessa's red grave.
The mood is right, the spirit's up. We're here tonight, and that's enough. Simply having a wonderful Christmas time. Simply having a wonderful Christmas time. The party's on, the feeling's here, that only comes